And welcome to Video Game Hangover. I'm Randy Dickinson, and I am back in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania this week.
Oh, welcome back. I am
Thank
DJ
you.
Ross. I am in Mountain View, California.
Each week here on Video Game Hangover, we talk about the games that have been keeping us up at night. It is week 2 of our summer backlog attack, and we're playing Red Earth and the Legend of Zelda.
This is it. 12 years ago, I started the show, so one day we could get Randy to talk about a Nintendo game. 555 episodes later, here we are. It's just going to be 50 minutes about how much The Legend of Zelda sucks.
I don't know if I have a full 50 minutes, but start the clock. Let's do this. Yeah, well, I've talked about NES games before, have I not?
Have you?
Have I?
When have you? What NES games have you played?
Mario Brothers.
Okay, all right.
End of list.
It's like, yeah, it just goes on and on.
I'm on the record as saying, and I stand by the fact that I don't like old video games. I think the further back you go, the less interesting I find them. So, yeah.
Well, I hope everybody out there who's been listening since the beginning has been looking forward to this episode as much as I have been.
Hold on to your hats. Hold on to your ocarinas.
Ooh, getting ahead of yourself.
Yeah, but a few years off on that one. I like that game. That's a good game.
Yeah. Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah. Yep.
It's good. We got to set the baseline.
Yeah. What was your first Zelda game? Did you come to the series at Legend of Zelda in 1986, or were you?
Oh, interesting question. It was actually Zelda 2.
Oh, okay.
So, not this one. I played them in the wrong order.
That's very unlike you.
I know. Well, times were different back then. I wasn't as wizened as I am these days. I'm probably like 7 years old. I don't know when that game came out.
Yeah, Zelda 2 is 87.
Well, I don't think I was I played it at release, so
sure.
It's probably slightly older.
In line at Funko Land waiting to get your copy.
Yeah. Yep.
At Electronics Boutique.
Yeah.
Did you have one of those? What was your video game hookup when you were a kid?
It was there was an Electronics Boutique, which is exciting, but Toys R Us was the big one.
That was it. Oh, really?
Yeah, man, Toys R Us was just a wonderland. It was the whole wall of video games you could just gawk at behind the glass.
Yeah.
One of those lucky days where you've actually got to go there and get a video game. You get to take a little ticket down from the top and take it over to the cage, because that's where they actually kept all of them.
Right. They had to get somebody with keys. They had to get a manager.
Yeah.
Yep. That's funny. I don't think I did a lot of video game shopping at Toys R Us. My mall, Enfield, Connecticut, the Enfield Mall, had a Babbage's, an electronics boutique, and a Funko Land.
Oh, I always liked. It was a little weird when malls would have more than one video game shop.
Yeah,
I mean, especially now since there's just the one. They've all merged into a single video game.
Well, I think all of those eventually became, there was EB Games for a while, and now they're all just GameStop, right?
Yeah. But it was always kind of funny, because it was like, oh, they didn't have what I was looking for at Electronics Boutique. I'll just go to the, Software, etc., or whatever, on the complete opposite side of the mall.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, Funko Land was good, because that was my first experience, buying used video games and things like that.
Yeah.
That was fun to just explore, because they always had weird old electronics and stuff. And this was the 90s, so it was exceptionally weird old electronics. But yeah, they were also the first to go out of business, as far as memory serves. They were not
Funko
there for
Land.
long.
Yeah. I think Funko Land came to my area later than the other ones. So when it did, I was just like, ooh, a new video game store.
New old video games.
Yeah, kind of its own spin on things.
Yeah.
Strangely enough, I'm pretty sure that's the only. I mean, it's a GameStop now, but I think it's the only one out of all the other like electronics boutique and everything that I would frequent that is still around.
Yeah, I don't get to do a lot of like cool like indie video game stores, that are not part of the GameStop mothership.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we have much in my little neighborhood here.
I don't even know what the. I mean, I haven't been to a video game store in so long, other than like Best Buy. There's one right down the street from me, as a matter of fact. But
yeah,
nothing really comes to mind for like indie video game stores. I know there used to be a couple around here. In fact, there was this amazing like import store down in San Jose. I bought an arcade stick from there.
Yeah, cool.
But they closed down several years after that, which was disappointing because I only got to go there one time, and I went in and it was just wall to wall like arcade sticks and weird PSP and DS colors that like didn't come out in the US. I was just like, oh my God, look at this place! It's like a candy store. So cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I'm doing a quick Google search, and we have a Play and Trade not far from me. I've never been in there. Mm-hmm. That's a small chain, I think. There's a few of those.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got other stuff around. That's Lazarus Games, the Adventurers Guild. Which is
Lazarus Games? What did they
Lazarus
sell there?
Games?
Yeah.
It says it's a hobby store. I believe that's probably board games and pen and paper games.
Okay. I was like, they only sell copies of E.T. that have been dug out of the desert.
And we have the Adventurers Guild, which I've heard of, which is like a game store. It's more of a board game store, and they have like a cafe inside, and I think they serve like liquor. So it's like board games and booze. I don't know why I don't go there. I should go there.
Yeah, I was like, well, it's exciting. Aren't you there right now?
That sounds like my thing.
You just do a live show from there every week.
Right, exactly. I'd be like the 10th person doing a podcast there that day.
Right. You have to book your slot.
Take a number. But yeah, no, just the Play and Trade seems to be sort of the one video game hookup that's independent near me. Check that out. I will explore. I'll report back.
Nice.
Yeah. My first Zelda, as we taking us back to that topic, was Wind Waker.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's a good one.
So, yeah, I felt like that was a good place to get on board, but I think it definitely sets a bar.
Yeah. It's funny. That was so polarizing when they first revealed it. But afterwards, I was like when it finally came out, I just thought, well, why aren't all future Zeldas like this? And then a few of them kind of were, but it didn't stick quite as much as I had hoped.
Yeah. I mean, that's sort of the fun part of the Zelda thing is that it, occasionally feels a little experimental.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
In a way that,
quite as consistent.
Yeah. Maybe some of the other Nintendo franchises never really got quite so wacky.
Well, I mean, Mario's kind of jumps around quite a bit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, stylistically, in addition to him also just jumping on stuff.
The whole Mario sports thing is a weird, interesting detour, where it's sort of like, somebody at some point had to make the executive decision is what if we took Mario and all of his friends out of the platforming games and had him play golf?
Sure.
Yeah. But yeah, Zelda, to the best of my knowledge, or Link, for that matter, have never played golf.
He has driven a go-kart, though.
Has he?
Yeah, wasn't he in Mario Kart? He's got his own track.
The Mario Kart 8, he's got a motorcycle.
Oh, he's got a motorcycle, okay.
Yeah. Although I'm not sure if you can put him in other vehicles, but yeah.
Oh, well, he knows his way around a racetrack.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a play there between naming him Link and a golf game. Hitting the links.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll be right back. I'm going to copyright that.
He's going to copyright it. Like somebody at Nintendo a couple years from now, they're trying to name their new Zelda golfing game. They're like, you're not going to believe this.
Yep.
Somebody beat us to it.
Zelda golf, hitting the links.
There you go.
Yep. I don't even know what that means. Do you know what that means? What are the links in golf?
Isn't that just playing golf? Like the links? I don't know why they call it the links.
Links in golf, meaning a links golf course is the oldest style of golf course. First developed in Scotland, the word comes from the Scots language and refers to an area of coastal sand dunes, and also sometimes to open parkland.
Oh, well, now it all makes sense.
Yep. It also retains this more general meaning in Scottish English dialect.
Okay, so this will be like a Scottish spin on Link. He'll have like a kilt. Yeah. And the whole Zelda theme will be played on bagpipes. Is this getting too stereotypical?
That's fantastic.
What other Scottish stereotypes are there?
Something about beer, I'm sure. Something beer. About,
some
Guinness.
Haggis.
Yeah. Oh.
It's Irish.
Yeah.
I can just made a lot of people real angry.
Let's get off this topic. But yeah, so I think Wind Waker... Yeah, certainly set an expectation for me of what a Zelda game was going to look like and play like, and it made it real difficult to kind of rewind from there. I eventually went on and played like newer versions of like Majora's Mask and Ocarina of Time, and I think most recently I played Link's Awakening when A Link Between Worlds came out for the DS or 3DS. What was that? Early 2013, I think it says in this list here. After that, I went back and played A Link to the Past. So like I filled in most of the blanks, but I still have never played Zelda 2 now. I've not played the Oracle of Seasons or Ages.
Those are basically just Link's Awakening, aren't they? That was always how I understood those.
Yeah, is that how they do it? And I've still not played Skyward Sword, so that remains unplayed.
Right. No, nobody's played Skyward Sword.
Yeah. I'm not really sure if that's actually a video game, but so there's a few holes in my Zelda history, but I can't say that about The Legend of Zelda anymore. I did not see credits roll. It seems unlikely that I ever will.
You said you're going to get through this in what, like 6 hours? So
that's what the internet said.
Not the case.
I think I could conceivably get through this in 6 hours if I could walk more than an inch on screen without just getting completely wiped out by every enemy on screen.
Swarmed by Octorocks.
It is like a bullet hell shooter. It's like, yeah, every time you walk into a screen, there's just like swarms of enemies coming at you. Yeah. It is not a game that wants you to proceed unmolested. It is, my takeaway from playing Legend of Zelda is that this is more annoying than anything. So if I could somehow find a slider to turn down just the intensity or the frequency of the number of enemies on screen, probably playing The Legend of Zelda would be a much more enjoyable experience.
Yeah, it is pretty intense. In anticipation of this episode, I went to the the little Nintendo Online thing on the Switch, which just has every video game in it now. I haven't checked in on it in quite a while, but when I loaded it up, it was like, there are new games available, and I just...
It's a lot, yeah.
Spent a couple minutes clicking through all these new games. I was like, oh, I would play this. I would play this too. Like, how many new games did they add to this thing? It's quite incredible. But I spent a little time playing Zelda 1 again, just as a little refresher. And you really do get swarmed by enemies almost immediately. Yeah. Like, whenever you go onto a new screen, you have like half a second as the enemies spawn in to kind of plan your route to safety on the other side of the screen. But then that is it. Then you're just like navigating the minefield of bullets and whatever monsters happen to be on that screen.
Yeah. There is in that first few minutes a set of screens where you have like a body of water and there's some kind of water monster who is like shooting fireballs at you.
Oh yeah.
Who is surprisingly accurate. And there's enemies there on the land portion, the beach, as it were, that just pop up out of the sand, like directly in front of you. So you can't walk in a straight line. You have to
gotta watch out for those guys.
Yeah. You have to kind of inch forward. I was like waving my sword around, just trying to like, if they pop up, well, I got the sword out, I'm safe.
Yeah.
And there's the whole thing in the first Legend of Zelda, which I had to Google because it was not clear to me, is that you can throw your sword. I guess it's a throw.
Yep. You got the sword beam.
Sword beam. Is that what that's the sort of the official name? Is that canon?
Well, I don't know the official name. That's
okay.
what everybody called it.
But only if you have full hearts.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So it's easy initially to kind of like hang at the perimeter of the screen and sword beam all the enemies. But you take even a half a heart of damage and you can't do that anymore. You got to walk up on them.
Yeah. That was a fun reminder of just like, I feel like that was just a design choice in a lot of video games back then, where as soon as you just mess up in the slightest, it all just like compounds and the game becomes a nightmare.
Yeah, yes.
Like you you get hit once and all your power-ups fly out of you or whatever whatever happens in the game you have to be playing. But yeah, you gotta keep that sword beam. That's key.
Yeah. So that became ultimately initially my kind of goal, is like hold on to this as long as possible. So it was this sort of trepidatious, like take a step over the border into the next screen, wait for it to sort of slide to the side, and then how many enemies can I sort of pick off with the sword beam from here? And sometimes it's a few and sometimes it's not many. The thing that I couldn't figure out is that occasionally my shield would deflect projectiles. But sometimes I would just get hit by shit. And I'm like, how does it decide when I'm like, is there a shield button I'm missing? But no, the NES controller only had 2 buttons and I know what both of them do.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how it decides what things bounce off your shield and what don't. It's some weird random number generator maybe, but I was not able to rely on that at all.
Should this episode just be me mansplaining The Legend of Zelda to you for 45 minutes?
Perhaps we should have done this before I attempted to play The Legend of Zelda, because it seems a little too late now, DJ.
Okay, well, I was going to say, I mean, I kind of, in retrospect, wish I had prepped you a little bit more on this. Although,
or at least
the advice I was going to give you...
To talk me out of it.
Well, no, I wouldn't dream of it. I was just thinking, like, so much about this game and kind of the allure of it back in the day was just the mystery. Because, I mean, like a lot of games back then, it just doesn't really guide you at all. Yeah. And also, like a lot of games back then, it just, like, mechanically, you kind of had to figure out a lot for yourself. Like the shield thing. So, I mean, I think what you were experiencing is you can't deflect stuff if you're attacking also. And then also, you can't deflect the fireballs until you buy a better shield. So that is probably probably an issue.
Yeah. I don't know that I ever got a better shield.
Oh, yeah, no, you don't get that until way later. Or actually, you can just kind of, if you find the right shop, you can buy it. That's one of the crazy things about the first Zelda. It's like you can you can just find stuff.
Yeah.
But I remember my friend who was also playing this, he found the bow. And he was just having a great time with it, like shooting arrows, because like then you don't need the sword beam. Then you just have this bow. You always have this ranged attack. But in Zelda 1, every time you shoot the bow, you don't have a separate inventory for arrows or anything. You just shoot 1 rupee every time you fire the bow. So he was like just going nuts with this thing, and suddenly, before he knew it, he didn't have any money anymore. So just fun little like quirks like that. I don't know.
Yeah. I was trying to think of sort of like the language of Legend of Zelda, like the things that, like, as a player of modern Zelda games, I sort of like have an understanding of what they mean. Like the fairies refill your health, and a heart container gives you an additional container of heart. And sometimes there's heart pieces, you need to collect multiples, and that gives you an additional, etc. Like, to put myself in the mindset of a video game player in 1986 who knew none of that stuff, who had not played Breath of the Wild and Spirit Tracks and Phantom Hourglass and all these other games where those things were sort of, kind of explained to you, or at least sort of understood, and trying to figure them out. Like you walk into that shop initially, like I think there's a shop door, a cave you walk into immediately at the beginning, you get the sword. That's where the famous, it's dangerous to go alone.
Didn't miss the sword.
Did not miss the sword. No, I'm like, if there's a cave, I'm walking into it. Then I went sort of on like, what else do I need? Where else do I go? So I just started walking right, is what, my instinct in a video game is to do.
He went right, guys.
What a newbie mistake. No. And then eventually found a shop where I had 3 things to choose from. And I forget what the 3 things were. I think there was like a glass jar, there was a heart container, and there was a rupee, if I remember correctly. but there's no context. That doesn't tell you what any of them do, what impact it's going to have on your game, what, if this is, which one is a better choice for the circumstance that you find yourself in. You just walk up to one, and it doesn't. Again, modern video games open up a little screen with a text crawl that explains what it does and what it is, and you can back out of it and choose something else if you want. Nope, the one you touch is the one you get forever, and you're stuck with it.
That's it. Yep.
Yep. So again, putting myself into the mindset of a video game player in 1986, and like, okay, well, it's the first 10 minutes of this game. Did I make a good choice or not? Do I start over entirely and come pick another thing, or do I just live with my shitty choice?
Yeah. I mean, you could save the game.
You could, and then you come back and choose a different thing.
Well, I mean, you would save it, and then if you mess something up, I guess you would just reset it. But that was kind of novel at the time.
Sure. So yeah, I'm not saying it's sort of better that games are more explainy now. I just feel like a little context would be helpful.
Sure. Is that better? Is that like preferable though to every single time you pick up a rupee? It's like, oh, you found a rupee. This means you have 20 rupees now.
No, it's the answer clearly is something in between. It's
something in the middle.
Yeah. Explain it once. When I was a little surprised by how little of its sort of mechanics and world and lore and anything that like the game kind of explained to you in any realistic way.
Mm-hmm.
Or recognizable way.
So I think when I was imagining how I should have set this up for you, because you were talking about like, oh, I'll have game facts there, and I just thought, no, like don't just like start the game with game facts open in a tab and be like, okay, where's the first dungeon? But I was going to encourage you to, if you got lost or you couldn't figure something out, not have that immediate instinct to run to the FAQ and just kind of walk around for a while, and maybe at some point you'll run into the first dungeon, or maybe you'll run into like the third dungeon. That's weird. Like, why are you already at the third dungeon? But so much of that game is just about just seeing what's out there, like what's on the next screen, or maybe there's this whole area you never realized it existed, and what sort of mysteries are in there.
Yeah. So I tried that initially. It was my hope that I could kind of stumble my way through this. Mm-hmm. But I really sort of eventually felt like, well, I'm just wasting time here. I'm kind of wandering around, I'm exploring, and like, that's cool, right? I mean, that's, if I had 20 free hours a week to sort of explore video games and wanted to futz around in the original Zelda a bit, that was cool. But I feel like I'm a bit like I'm on a timeline here. I've got limited playtime. At least make it a little easy on me to get through this. So after dying quite a bit and then feeling like I was sort of walking in the wrong direction too many times, and there's those screens where there's like two statues, and if you touch one of them, moves, there's a staircase you can go down, and there's usually some surprise in there. I got a couple of those where I was sort of like, which statue do I touch? Is it a mistake to touch the wrong one? So choice paralysis started to set in. And yeah, I guess it's also sort of a little surprising to me the first time coming to this, how much of the game is just available to you from the jump.
Oh yeah. That's the best part of it.
You can...
one part of it.
It's one part of it. That is indeed a part of it, correct. You can walk to the first dungeon from the minute you start the game before you even pick up a sword.
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, sort of would never happen in a modern video game, except for, the most recent Legend of Zelda, I guess. But
right, yeah. And all the other ones, you're still doing tutorial stuff for like 10 hours.
Right, yes.
Okay, so you did find the first dungeon.
I did find I don't know if it was the first dungeon, but I found a dungeon.
Okay.
Are they numbered? How do you know it's the first one?
Oh, it says level 1 up in the corner.
Oh. I don't know what mine said. I'm sorry.
Okay. I have to say, so I mentioned that I started with Zelda 2, which seems weird, but in a way it kind of makes sense to me, because up until that point, like, video games had just been like Super Mario Brothers to me. They were like side-scrolling platformers. And that's more or less what Zelda 2 is. So
Zelda 2 is that, yeah.
Yeah, so I thought, oh, okay, so, He's got this green elf guy instead of Mario, and he's got a sword or whatever, but he's kind of doing the same stuff. And then, like, I don't know how much longer it was until I played Zelda 1, but it kind of blew my mind because it was, it's essentially an open world game. Like you're saying, you can go anywhere from the get-go. And it felt so structureless. And so by the time I finally got into a proper dungeon, and it just said level 1 up at the top, I was like, oh, this is like all those other video games. It's like Mario starts on level 1, all those other games start on level 1. Now I understand what's happening.
Oh.
Anyway, just a weird connection.
Okay. I thought you had more. It was a dramatic pause. Yeah, I can see that. I don't remember what it said when I got there. So I did not get far in the dungeon until I got killed. I eventually found a walkthrough, and kudos to Arcasa on our Discord for recommending zeldadungeon.net, which is an awesome repository of Zelda lore. Not an official Nintendo site, but just has tons of really cool stuff about Zelda games, including some really, really good, super detailed walkthroughs with great pictures and, commitments to be spoiler-free and all that other fun stuff. And I found one for the original Legend of Zelda there that had, like, how to get yourself some, like, good health and some good rupees relatively early to make getting through the rest of the game, air quotes, easier.
Oof, right.
And it helped a little bit. It got me within the first hour or so. It got me up to 6 full heart containers.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, I was walking around with some money in my pocket, and I had bombs, and I had a pretty nice sword that clearly I didn't know how to work. It helped a little. But then, yeah, it's still a lot of choice. It's still a lot of, the walkthrough was like, walk 8 screens to the right. And I'm like, oh, that's easy. But no, no, absolutely not. All the reasons I said before, where, all of those screens are just swarmed endlessly by enemies, and all the rupees in the world are not going to impress them.
Yeah, you're really like, I don't know, you have to decide when you actually want to stand there and clear out some enemies. A lot of the time you just want to make your way to the other side of the screen. Yeah.
There was a bit of that in the walkthrough, which I thought, I guess maybe it's not funny, but was helpful, was like the guy in the lake shooting fireballs at you from early on. The walkthrough specifically said about him is that you can kill him, but it's not worth your time. Just move on.
Oh yeah,
like, okay,
just ignore that guy.
I need an adult standing over my shoulder going, don't even look at that guy. Just walk away. Which is not my instinct in video games.
Sure.
So the fun thing about the way that the NES service on the Switch handles Zelda is that it also has sort of a second instance of Zelda on the menu. I'm not sure if you caught this.
I was going to wonder, because I know it has these like special versions of a lot of games where they're like they're usually sort of like the God mode save file or something like that.
Sort of a very specific kind of save state, I guess. But yeah.
It's sort of like it very specific alternate experience. Yeah.
So the one for Zelda is you can just go in and play it as I initially started doing, but there's a second instance of it where it says it's the Zelda living the life of luxury.
Oh.
A souped up version of The Legend of Zelda. You'll start with a ton of rupees and items. You begin with all equipment, including the white sword, the magic shield, the blue ring, and even the power bracelet.
Oh, wow.
But if Ganon's still giving you a hard time, the power of money will overcome. Just buy yourself some more items and give it a shot. You have like 300 rupees, which is insane. All of these cool, like, souped up accessories and stuff. And I still found the game really difficult.
It's an easy game.
Yeah. You can't, buy your way through it by any stretch. So I don't know if I was, how old was I in 1986? If I was 12-year-old Randy and just had nothing to do all day and only 2 channels on television to choose from, and, 3 channels on the radio to listen to, this would probably be a thing that I would spend hundreds of hours trying to sort of suss out.
Oh, yeah.
But as an adult, it's really difficult to consume the original Legend of Zelda, I think.
How did you do with Link to the Past?
I did okay. I didn't And that is just sort of generally revered as kind of like one of a lot of people's favorite Zelda games.
Oh, yeah.
And I played it back to back with A Link Between Worlds, and I liked A Link Between Worlds more.
Okay, well, I mean, I can understand that.
Yeah, it's much more modern, sort of. It has a lot of more modern conveniences, I think. Mm-hmm. I found it difficult to get through A Link Between Worlds. I'm sorry, A Link to the Past, but I did get through it, which is something I can't say about The Legend of Zelda.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like I was saying, it's aged better than a lot of other games for that period, but it's still definitely a game from, what is it, 1986?
Yeah, of its era. Yeah.
Somebody mentioned it's like the 35th anniversary, actually the day we're recording this.
Oh, that's fun.
Probably the Japanese release date or something like that. But, it takes it takes some adjusting of your expectations to go into and really sort of embrace.
Yeah. It's interesting, though, how many of the things that are sort of still part of Zelda games were there in the beginning.
Yeah.
So it very much sort of, the developers of that game determined, whether for convenience or by design, a language, a visual language, a currency, a weapon set, et cetera, that 35 years later we're still playing with in Zelda games. So that's cool. It's really neat to sort of like walk in and go, I know what all this means. I know what all these things do. So there's definitely sort of a shorthand that comes with having consumed endless Zelda games that, a player in 2000 or 1986 would not have had. So that's fun. And kudos to the people, probably the thousands of people at this point who have contributed any time to making a Zelda game, to sort of sticking to that language.
Well, I'm sure that it's like, I don't know, that's more of a requirement now than it was for the first few sequels coming off of this. It's interesting you mentioned the ocarina, which, you probably didn't get to the point where you get the flute in this, but there was a flute that just wasn't an ocarina
interesting.
At this point. So at some point they just decided, henceforth, it will be this specific flute.
I mean, did anybody know what an ocarina was before that Zelda game? So
no, that was the thing. I remember thinking, so the ocarina first showed up in A Link to the Past, as it were, and then when they announced the Ocarina of Time, like when they did the title reveal, I was like, well, that sounds a little silly. Like, it's just that same weird flute again. They're just sticking with it. That's fine.
Yeah. Isn't there some story, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, that is Zelda 2 was some other video game that after the success of the first Zelda, they just sort of rebranded?
That's Mario 2.
Am I doing that, Mario? Okay.
Yeah,
Mario.
as far as I think Zelda 2, well, I wouldn't say I'm 100% sure, but I'm pretty sure that was always a Zelda game.
Okay. So it was Mario Brothers 2 that was something else, and because the first Mario Brothers game was super successful, they just turned it into which is why it's so unlike all the other Mario Brothers games.
Right. Yeah, I forgot the exact circumstances, but they did make a proper Mario Brothers 2 in Japan, and it was just a nightmare. So I forget why they specifically sort of converted this other game to be Super Mario Brothers 2 in the West, but that's just what ended up happening. I'm sure somebody has just done the entire has the full backstory. It is all over the internet at this point.
Oh, so the Japanese sequel is the Lost Levels.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay. I had heard of that before, but didn't know what the context of it was.
Yeah, it's not a fun game to play. And I say this as somebody who enjoys the first Super Mario Brothers. It's like the Japanese Super Mario Brothers 2, just not enjoyable.
Interesting. Okay. I don't know why I sort of glommed that story onto Zelda, but...
Well, I mean, I feel like that wouldn't be unheard of back then. That's why I was just thinking like, oh, was Zelda 2 a different game? I'm like, so again, I'm reasonably confident that it was always a Zelda game, but there's always that remote possibility that I'm just overlooking something.
Doki Doki Panic apparently was the Mario 2 game.
Yeah, that's the one.
Interesting. Okay. I need to close Wikipedia now, otherwise I'll just sit here and read it to people. So yeah, I'm a little disappointed that I was not able to spend more time with this and get to a credit roll, but I put a couple, I would say 2 hours, almost 3 hours into roaming around Zelda, dying and trying again. Yeah. The walkthrough got me further than I would have ever gotten alone, I think, so that was helpful. But yeah, a tough game, really kind of hard to consume in 2022.
Yeah, you really have to, like, I don't know, be determined to get into it.
Yeah.
I remember back then it was like, it was quite difficult, so it wasn't just like, games are much harder back then, but even this game, I remember there were like a bunch of bosses that I had, take many, many attempts to get through. I would try a bunch of different tactics and everything. I'd be like, sweating on the controller outside the boss room, just thinking like, this is it. Maybe this is the run. And even going back to it just over the weekend, like, first dungeon was fine. I've done that dungeon a bunch of times. The second one, though, there's just this room, which is filled with statues that shoot at you. It's the room where you get the magic boomerang, or the silver boomerang, or whatever it's called, for anyone following along. And you are just attacked by all these other enemies that are just throwing boomerangs at you. And like you said, it's basically a bullet hell shooter at that point. And there were moments when I was just like, I can't even fight back against these guys. I just need to dodge and not get hit because I don't want to lose my sword beam, because that's the key, really. And then I was reminded that the Switch Online thing has that nice rewind feature. So as soon as I remember that, I just thought, okay, finally, 35 years later, I have the upper hand at this encounter. So I'll get that silver boomerang.
I should have used that more often. I'm kicking myself now because I probably could have saved myself some pain and heartache. If I had deployed that a little more liberally. But I'm not accustomed to that being in video games. Yeah,
well, I was thinking it's too bad they have that alternate sort of like save file option, but they don't have anything like, like a modern accessibility mode where it's just like, oh, you don't take damage. You're just here to kind of go through the dungeons, or you never lose the sword beam or something like that.
Yeah. That would have been fantastic. I would have been all about that.
Yeah. There's a big glowing arrow that points you in the direction of the next screen you want to go to.
Yep. I'll play that too. Let's do it. I'm all about it. I'm looking at, I just Googled, like, what's the hardest Zelda game? And it says Zelda 2 is the hardest game.
Oh, yeah. Zelda 2 is way harder.
Is it really? Wow. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, it's a platformer. It's not the greatest controlling platformer either. But yeah. And eventually I feel like in Zelda 1 you can kind of brute force your way through it with a couple of potions or whatever you got going on. Get the different rings eventually so you take less damage.
Yeah.
But I remember Zelda 2, like, every time I wanted to go through Zelda 2, it was like an ordeal, because you really have to know what's going on with the combat in that game.
And there's a lot of encounters in Breath of the Wild that are pretty intense from a combat perspective.
Breath of the Wild. Now you got your whole inventory full of like soups and things. You're good to go with whatever they throw at you.
Thank God for all the soup I'm carrying around.
I know.
Yeah. But yeah.
He got like 40 swords in his backpack.
This is true, but like 2 of them are good.
Sure, that's fair. And the last 2 you wouldn't even use because you're saving them for a rainy day.
Oh, right. Yeah. No, I'm going to die with that sword. Absolutely. I've played a lot of these, though. Link to the Past, they say, is the 4th hardest. Link's Awakening, the new Link's Awakening, the one that came out a couple of years ago, I beat. And that is the 5th hardest Zelda game, according to this.
Wait, what's the 3rd hardest?
3rd hardest is Oracle of Seasons and Ages.
Oh, interesting. Oh, man. I've never played either of those.
Yeah. It says,
did the Link's Awakening remake have the sword beam in it?
Not that I remember. It had the charge up, which I kept trying to do.
Yeah.
In the NES
move.
one.
Or the spin thing.
Yeah, right, exactly. So for the sake of our listeners who don't know what the fuck I'm talking about, that if you, in the newer Zelda games, if you hold down the attack button, Zelda Link. Excuse me. Whoa! Almost got kicked off my. Yeah.
Just making enemies this week.
Don't send your angry emails. Link will charge up a sword attack and do a crazy spin move, which is a lot of games is really just good for cutting the grass. But I kept trying to do it in the NES Zelda, and it wouldn't let me.
Yeah. Oh man, the Sword Beam Zelda one so good. It's like kind of in Zelda 2, not nearly as good. Still kind of useful. And then in Zelda 3, it's just terrible. It's kind of this dopey looking swirly thing.
Yeah. I need a Legend of Zelda save with like 500 rupees and infinite sword beam.
Yeah,
and
that's what you want.
Full body armor. Yeah.
Right, just so riot outfit.
Just right, exactly. Just lumbering around from all of my armor. But yeah, it was fun. It was a little experiment, a failed experiment ultimately, but I can now say I've made something of an attempt to play the original Legend of Zelda, which I had not been able to do for the first all the years of my life.
Well, I think that's very much the spirit of the Backlog Attack is dragging games out that maybe you don't get through all of them, but now you've experienced the Legend of Zelda.
I tried.
Yeah. And I think, 2 or 3 hours of the Legend of Zelda in 2022, that's impressive.
Right.
Did you end up playing any of this on the little Game & Watch thing? Or all I didn't.
No, I have not broken the seal on that. I had a no shortage of options for how to play Legend of Zelda because it's also part of the Ambassador games on the 3DS. So I'm like, I could play this on the little Game & Watch. I could play it on the 3DS, or I could play it on the Switch. And the Switch was the easiest. I had it with me everywhere, and it seemed like the most. Not it certainly wasn't easy, but I didn't have to sort of like dust off some old device or anything like that to be able to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
Plus, it's got the rewind and the save states and all that. That's good.
Right. So I knew that, if anything was going to make it a little easier to consume, it was going to be that stuff on the Switch.
Nice.
Yeah. But yeah, Legend of Zelda.
Well, all right, we've done it.
Yep.
That's, we can shut it down. That was the last episode.
I've still never seen the end of Majora's Mask either, because I think that's probably my least favorite Zelda game.
Oh, I've never really made a serious attempt to play that. Like, I think I rented it one weekend in high school or whenever it came out. And I was just like, I'm not feeling this one.
Yeah. It's I like a time loop in a video game. I think that can be fun. Yeah.
It was just like too much for me to take in the course of one weekend, because I was just like, oh, well, now I'm just second guessing myself all the time. Like, should I be over here, or where's the correct place to be during this loop, or do I have to wait for another loop? It was just a lot.
Yeah. I tried. They made the 3DS update to Majora's Mask. I think it was generally well conceived or received. It conceived and received. And I tried to play that a number of times and just did not hook me the way a Zelda game usually does.
Oh man, I gotta put that on my list of 3DS games to get before they shut down the shop.
Oh yeah. The Ocarina of Time version on the 3DS is awesome. I would recommend that if you have access to it.
Yeah, I think I have that.
That's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so a Zelda show, everyone.
Wonderful.
What did you play, DJ?
I was
How many Zelda games did you play?
I played an hour, or however long. I played 1 dungeon's worth, 1.5 dungeons worth.
Is that a unit of measurement in the Zelda world? 1.5 dungeons?
A dungeon? Yeah. It's funny because in all the other ones, you go and collect 3 things before you go and pick up the Triforce pieces. But in this one, you just go right to it, like immediately. You just got a chunk of the Triforce on you. You're like, oh, okay, we're getting, not wasting any time with this one. But no, I was going to play Lunar Nights. I actually started playing Lunar Nights, but that's it's not really a long game, but it's it's more substantial than I was prepared to get into this week. So I played Red Earth, which is the next thing on my list. Red Earth is a fighting game from Capcom that came out in the late 90s. I was trying to get my story straight on this. So I was under the impression that it did not come out outside of Japan, but I think it's more like it received a very, very limited release in arcades and never came to home platforms.
Oh, interesting.
Until earlier this year, where it popped up on this Capcom Fighting Collection on the Switch, and I believe it's on other platforms as well. I could be mistaken about that. But I thought, all right, this could be cool. I've never played this at all, because I just really haven't had the access to it. So I'm going to see what this is all about, because as we established a couple of shows ago, I used to be big into these Capcom fighting games. So when this collection came out, I made a very brief attempt to just figure out what's going on with this game before I hopped over to Vampire Savior. And I did not have a great time with it. It just seemed like there were these fundamental things that I was not understanding about it. But as part of the Backlog Attack, I decided, okay, this is my opportunity to go back and really just figure out what the deal is with this game. And it's funny, coming off of playing that the modern day chapter in Live Alive a couple weeks ago, which, if you remember, was just more or less just Street Fighter 2 as told through a JRPG. Because it turns out the Red Earth is much closer to like being an RPG, or it's a fighting game with these weird RPG elements in it, which was not immediately apparent when I ducked into the versus mode a couple months ago.
Huh.
Which I think is amazing, because like at the same time that Capcom was putting out all these different versions of Street Fighter and everything, they were still doing sort of the side-scrolling like beat-em-up games every once in a while. And so there were like all these different versions of it. They did like, I don't know if you ever saw Magic Sword, but there was that game, and there was like Knights of the Round and King of Dragons, and they even made a Dungeons and Dragons sort of a side-scrolling brawler.
Oh, really?
And I thought, this just seems like, they've got these two sort of things going on. They've got the brawlers and they've got Street Fighter happening, and Red Earth is like both of these things colliding and turning into one game. Because you start it up and it looks like a fighting game where you pick your character and you get thrown into, a one-on-one 2D fighting game match. But then during the match, there will just be like treasure chests that pop up and, spit out gems that give you experience, and sometimes they'll give you a little magic orb that you use to execute super moves and things. And after each round, or after each match against your opponent, if you're lucky, your character will level up and gain like stat bonuses or unlock new moves. It's really bizarre.
Oh, wow.
So I thought, well, okay, so that's interesting.
And sort of really kind of uncharacteristic of of fighting games.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
I'm not an authority by any means, but in 1996, I imagine there was not a ton of that happening in fighting games.
No, I can think of I can't really think of any that did this exact thing. It's interesting how this would work, because so you level up your character as you're playing the game. And then when you complete the game, which, good luck if it's your first attempt playing this, or when you get a game over and you get, kicked to the continue screen, the please insert coin to continue, it'll give you a password, which is like 9 or 10 digits.
Oh, yeah.
And the idea is you would just like scroll that down, and the next time you play the game, you would put in that password, and it'll sort of remember your character progress from the last time.
Man, I remember that from video games. That was a thing.
Yeah, just having to write down a password as the timer counts down.
Yeah. As the timer counts down, right.
Yeah.
I have a fond memory of sort of renting video games as a kid, and previous players would write down their save codes inside the guidebook in the rented video game. So yeah, I distinctly recall like reading the letter codes to my stepbrother while he put them in to see how far other people had gotten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like the ones that had the weird symbols in it. So you'd have a bunch of letters, and then there would be like a spade or a diamond or something. It's like, oh, why don't they just do letters? That's easy. But anyway, it's interesting. So you have this sort of password save system. So at any point, you decide, if you're just done at the arcade for the day, you write down your password, and the next time you come back and you've got your level 5 character ready to go.
At the arcade? That's new to me.
Well, yeah, so you have to be, keep in mind this only came out in Japan, so I don't know what the arcade situation was like at the time.
Yeah.
So maybe everybody had their little notebooks they would scrawl their arcade passwords in. But yeah, still pretty unusual, pretty out of the ordinary. In fact, it's very nice playing this on the Switch because you can just hit that screenshot button and you got your password saved there. It would be very nice if they had just taken a step further and let you, or just gotten the game to remember it for you, but whatever. it's minor detail. But anyway, so I spent some time after I realized this is what's going on with this game. Just kind of playing through it, trying a bunch of the different characters. There are only 4 playable characters in this, which is kind of weird for a fighting game. I don't really understand why that is. Because during the rest of the game, you fight against way more than 4 characters. There are way more than 4 opponents that you go up against. But you're just limited to these 4 protagonists for some reason.
Yeah. Is it always you v the computer, or can you play against other human beings?
You can play against other people. And if I understand this correctly... Yes, yeah. When you're playing against another player, you are just both set to the maximum level. So you have all your moves unlocked so that, evens the playing field quite a bit.
Oh, interesting.
So I didn't try any of that. I don't actually know if this collection has online for this specific game. I know it does for some of the others in the collection. But either way, I didn't try the versus mode. I was mostly focused on the arcade mode. And for the most part, it plays like a typical sort of Capcom fighting game from that era. You've got your 6 attack buttons. You've got your special moves and everything. You use the orbs that I mentioned to execute super moves, which is a little different. And the fighting system seems to place a little more emphasis on sort of blocking and countering than I'm used to in Street Fighter or all the other games coming out at the time. But for the most part, it just seemed like, I could see myself playing this if it had been out in arcades and I had access to it back in the 90s. It was kind of fun. Yeah. The level thing is really interesting. It seems like a lot of games back then, or like a lot of arcade games specifically, you're not really expected to get through it all in one credit the first time you play it, especially starting out at level 1 in this game. But it's very generous, even though it's, kind of beating you down and taking your money to get you to continue over and over again. In that, if you get defeated by an enemy, like one of these big boss enemies, and you continue, the boss will restart with the same amount of health that you left off at. So it really is just a matter of you putting in enough coins to land the lucky hit and finish off each boss before you get to the end. The bosses are actually really cool in this because there's a really wild just variety. One of the ones you fight early on. Depending on which character you pick, you kind of go through the story in a different order. But there's this one that it's more or less like a T-Rex. So you are this, all the characters are human, and they just stand on 2 legs, and some of them have weapons that they swing around. But then sometimes you just fight a dinosaur, and then there's this other one that's like a big sort of tentacle kind of nautilus thing. This little seashell monsters. They're not monsters in real life, but
Okay, I see. I'm looking at screenshots of this now, and I see a wizard fighting a dinosaur. I see it looks like Lion-O from.
Yeah, that's Leo.
There's a stretch there from Thundercats fighting the Nautilus thing. Yeah,
he was cursed with a lion's head. He was the disgraced king from his kingdom.
Oh, you got backstory.
Oh yeah, it's wild, the backstory in this game. But yeah,
it's gorgeous though. There's beautiful character design and really quite impressive environments and stuff here.
Yeah, well, as a matter of fact, this was one of the few games that came out on Capcom sort of next generation arcade board, which is the CPS3 board, which enabled them to have all this like really incredible animation and everything. But the weird thing is that they only use it for this game and like the 3 Street Fighter 3 games, and then everything went 3D. But for a while, you had these awesome looking games with just really like unheard of levels of animation and sprite work.
What's Warzard?
Oh, Warzard is the Japanese name.
Oh, gotcha. Okay, because I'm seeing that in some of the screenshots, and I'm like, is that a different game with the same characters?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of mixed whether Red Earth or Warzard is better in this case.
Yeah, neither one of them really tell you much.
yeah. Warzard, at least a little. I mean, I was gonna say it was less generic, but like, is it? I don't know. Anyway,
cool. No, I've never heard this before. It looks really neat.
It was cool. I had a surprisingly good time with it, especially compared to my experience from a couple months ago. I like went through it with a couple of different characters. I have several screenshots worth of passwords saved on my Switch, in case I ever go back to it. It's interesting. So like you put in the password, and it's not like it saves your progress through the game. So like if you quit out at the last boss, it's not going to restart you at the last boss the next time. It just remembers your character level. But I feel like that's enough. Like you really just want to preserve your sort of character progress the last playthrough. It is a little bit grindy. I don't know what to make of that. I mean, I guess it would be kind of disappointing if you could expect to get through, like, level your character all the way to the maximum in an afternoon. Although I suppose that's also like achievable if you really set your mind to it.
And you have enough quarters.
Yeah. I've just been kind of slowly grinding my way up with Kenji the ninja, because I kind of like the way he plays. And just kind of familiarizing myself. I'm not expecting to become a Red Earth master or anything, but it's kind of interesting. I mean, it's just this, I played my share of Street Fighter and in Darkstalkers and all that, but it's cool finally getting an opportunity to sit down with this thing and just see what the deal is.
Cool.
So yeah, pretty happy with it. Again, I feel like it's a great Backlog Attack game, because it's just like this lost sort of entry in Capcom's fighting game pantheon.
Yeah. And in a year where you're playing Live Alive, you get a couple of previously thought lost games off of your list.
I know. Yeah, I thought that was so funny, because it's like, okay, so this one is like a fighting game RPG crossover, and this one, it's like kind of doing the opposite. It's really just a weird coincidence. So if you're interested in checking this out, this is in the Capcom Fighting Collection. God, that's such a generic title. I hope I'm not getting that mixed up. But it came out on Switch earlier this year, and it also has all the Darkstalkers games, which I talked about a couple of weeks ago, plus some other sort of more obscure Capcom fighting games. Like it's got Cyberbots, and what was the other one? Like, I think it has Armored Warriors on it. That was more of a brawler. Maybe that's not even on there. Maybe I'm just imagining that. But it also has Pocket Fighter, or Super Gem Fighter, you may know it as, which is interesting because that just has a Red Earth character in it. So that was my first exposure to that. Like, it's the first instance of me just learning that this game existed. I was like, oh, who is this character? What is she from? It's weird.
Yeah. It is called the Capcom Fighting Collection. You're correct.
Okay, excellent.
Yep. It says that all titles have online play.
Oh, all of them do. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to venture out and start playing people online in Red Earth, but maybe someday.
What is Super Gem Fighter?
Oh, that's the one I was just talking about. It's like kind of these like chibi Street Fighter characters.
Right.
It's kind of like a slapstick game. Like everybody has they don't really have their full set of like Street Fighter moves, but a lot of the times they'll like pull out props and like hit people with stop signs and other ridiculous stuff. It's really good. So Red Earth, having a good time. I also heartily recommend this collection, because a lot of these games were not super easy to get your hands on.
Cool.
Until now, and now they're just all here. This is not to you specifically. I can't imagine you're a huge fighting game guy, but just in general.
I did not hear it that way, DJ. You're good.
Okay.
Yep. No, I'm going to set this one out, but thank you.
I recommend you go through all of these after you get through Zelda 2.
I like it's no surprise that I like horror movies and I like old Universal monsters and stuff like that. So Darkstalkers every now and then would pop up on my radar. The logo looks like a black metal band, and all of the characters in it look like some variation on a classic, horror movie monster. So I was like, oh, this is really, really cool, but totally not my kind of game. Also, it's really hard to say with my Northern Connecticut accent. Darkstalkers.
Darkstalkers, yeah.
Yeah.
Just call it vampire. It's your Japanese video game cred.
Oh, is that what it was called in Japan? Vampire.
Yeah. This is like not to go off on
Darkstalkers is better.
You like Darkstalkers better? Yeah,
I think we got the better run. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. We should wrap up with a little sort of advertisement for the Backlog Attack here, since we did not do it at the beginning of the show. You still have time to play along with us. DJ and I are picking 4 games out of our backlog to tackle before September 12th. We're also giving a prize for the most impressive feat of backloggery. So head over to VGHangover.com. There you will find a link to our Discord. And we would love for you to sort of check in with us, play games along with us, and update us on your progress. Last week we had a little challenge to share a screenshot from the game that you are working on. We've got a few in our backlog channel on the Discord. What is the challenge this week, DJ?
The challenge this week is we have another music show coming up. So in the spirit of that, we thought it would be cool if you just post a song. It could be like a YouTube video if they haven't all been, taken down from copyright violations. Of just a song from whatever game you're playing. Doesn't have to be whatever you're playing this instant. Just something from the backlog.
Oh.
Go nuts.
Nice. Man, I picked the wrong week to play Zelda. There's good music in that game.
Oh, you can post a Zelda song?
Yeah. No, those are the rules.
Okay.
I did spend a good amount of time just on that main screen letting the theme play. So it's not very long, but it's super memorable.
No, I was just thinking there's really only like 2 or 3 songs in that game.
Yeah.
But they're all bangers, so that's good.
All killer, no filler. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So what do you think about playing for next week? What do you have on your list that's up next?
So next week, I think I'll have played enough of Lunar Nights to get into it. I'm having a good time with it so far, so I'm looking forward to that. Unless I decide to switch it up and go directly to The Frog Detective. We'll see.
Oh. Don't threaten me with a good time.
We'll see. Could be vampires, could be frogs.
Could be some game where those two somehow come together.
No. Now we're talking.
I'm going to jump into my kind of the newest game on my list, Raji, an ancient epic.
Oh, cool.
Yeah. So I'm looking forward to playing something that has actual like checkpoints and a save system. More than one dimension. Oh, have I gone too far? I apologize. All right. If you need any more video game hangover in your brain, definitely follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/VGHangover. And you can always get show notes and links and tell us what you thought about this episode at VGHangover.com. If you want to do the backlog thing and you're not on Discord, you can certainly, send us screenshots and music quotes and stuff like that on Twitter as well. You do need some way of getting in touch with us. There's a few options on VGHangover.com, so check that out.
Yeah.
We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Amazon Music, and anywhere else you can get a podcast. And help us out by telling your friends about the show, please.
Yes, that helps us out immensely, just getting the word of mouth out there. Really appreciate it. What we also appreciate... Wait a minute. Gotta work on my segue here. We
are appreciative of this. You're not wrong.
Yes, we are also appreciative of Saria Lemus this week for our intro and outro music. There we go.
Yeah.
If you'd like to hear more of our work, perhaps you also appreciate hearing the intro and outro music, head over to pettypanol.bandcamp.com and you can take a listen there. maybe buy an album or two.
Awesome.
Maybe if one of those games that she's worked on is in your Backlog Attack, you could post up one of those songs in the Discord. There you go. Took care of it all for you.
Fantastic. All right, we'll be back next week. Until then, this is Randy Dickinson.
This is DJ Ross.
Thanks so much for listening to Video Game Hangover. Goodbye.
Good night.
See ya.